So I would say if you have any inkling whatsoever of writing a book, even if it's not the published, just for yourself, I got caught up in the how do I start, where do I start, researching how to start. And then that became 1 year, became 2 years, became 3 years. And I bought all the tools and the Scrivener and all these different things. And then that started going, well, I don't know how to use that. And it was all these excuses that came up for me. I would say to someone who's even contemplating writing in any capacity, just put the first word on paper. Just go for it. I needed to do a math equation because I'm kind of analytical. So I said, I Googled the memoir and how many words would a memoir be, or should it be? What's the average? And then I found that it was about 80,000 words. And I thought, well, how long does it take to type 80,000 words? So I Googled how long it takes to type per minute, and then I want to do this in a year time. So I did 80,000 divided by 365. And then I multiplied how long it takes to, words per minute. And it came to 7 minutes a day to finish the book in a year. And so I didn't account for all the emotion that I had to deal with and the research and so forth, but it got me going, and it got me to write that first word. And, the first 7 minutes, I would sometimes just write for 15 minutes, but I knew I was 2 days ahead, and there would be other days where I just look at the screen and just go, I got nothing, so it all kind of made up for it. But more than anything, I just type, and you can clean it up and edit it later, but just get it out there and get it onto paper.
Everyone, welcome back to Living the Next Chapter. I have a great author on this show today who's got an amazing story, and himself and his family have lived and walked a very interesting path. And I know that if you have family or friends, or you're in this situation yourself, you're going to learn a lot today from Brian on the show. And I'm excited about his book. I'm excited about the success of his book. And he's here to share all that with us as well today. Brian, welcome to Living the Next Chapter.
Thank you so much, Dave. I appreciate you taking me on here and chatting with me and your time. Absolutely.
So good to have you here. I've been looking forward to this. Tell everybody when we start off, Brian, where you are in this great big world of ours.
So right now we are living in the Orlando, Florida area. Yep. Just very like nice. A nice quiet suburb of Orlando called Mineola.
Beautiful. Awesome. Now you're an author and you've written a book about something that happened for you and your family, a very interesting story. And the one thing I love about your story, which we're going to get into, is how you're taking your story through your book and through your platform of writing this to help others, which is a unique combination of all these things working together. But let's go back early in the story before writing the book. Tell us a little bit about what's happened in your families to kind of introduce you to the audience so they can already connect with you on that level, and then let's go from there.
Okay, well, it's so weird to hear published author. First off, I never really ever thought of myself as an author. I was a very C student and definitely did not read voluntarily in school. My dad actually didn't think I could read. But it's been an ongoing joke. And hey, and then life takes its twists and turns. So I met my wife, Diana, in high school. So we're talking 30, I don't even know, it's about 34 years ago. And we developed our relationship, and that expanded. Finally, we got married after a long relationship and then a long engagement. So about 27 years old, we got married, and we did everything. Like, we took a long time to do everything, which included having kids. And then we were in our 30s, then our mid 30s. And we thought, shoot, I think we should probably try to start having kids, So we did, we tried. And at that time we were actually living in Mexico for a job opportunity, and it was not happening. And we didn't really think too much of it because, hey, look, if it happens, great. We're not really freaking out about having kids, but if she gets pregnant, great. And then through the years, we continued and then moved back to the States. And now Diana was really getting, like, my biological clock is ticking. and she felt that something was off. So in about our like 40 years old, she, or maybe a little bit younger, 39, 38, she and I both got checked out. And it turned out that she was producing less eggs, and the eggs that she was producing were not as powerful, or whatever the word is. They were just, weak. And so the option came up to try IVF. And we said, okay, well, let's do it. Let's try it, which I'm telling you, I don't think guys can do it. There's these injections in her stomach every single day. I mean, the hormones are racing. It's just an absolute, taking blood, it seems like every other day. It's just really incredible. And so we extracted the eggs, and then a couple of days later, after they get fertilized, then it's the implantation day, and we were getting all geared up, ready to leave. And the doctor called that morning and said, listen, none of the embryos made it, so there's no reason to come. And that was devastating, to say the least. But we continued on, and we pretty much just figured we're not going to have kids. And then a friend of mine at work said, I don't know if you know this, but we actually went through the foster program to adopt. I was very ignorant, so was my wife, about the fostering programs. I didn't even know you could foster to adopt. And so we looked into it, became foster parent certified, which that in itself is an incredible experience that is not easy for most people to go through. We lost half the class through the 6 weeks and so forth, because you're dealing with real cases. But lo and behold, we had about a week after we graduated, we had baby Eva come into our lives. She was 7 days old, and we had her. We started, doing the parent thing, and we realized early on that probably she was going to be going back with her natural birth parents, which was absolutely, in this case, the right thing for the family. But also it was, a little concerning for us, because, we definitely made it very clear that we want to foster to adopt, but you don't know the whole scope until days after. Regardless, we had her for 5 months, and she started really growing on us, and we got super attached. And that day that we had to give her to her parents for good was another very, very devastating day. Dinah could not even come with when I dropped off Eva. And so then we just thought, we're done. Game over. Forget it. We're not meant to have kids. We're not going to have kids. And the same company that I worked for in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, called and said, hey, listen, we're getting the band back together. If you want, we're going to go to Cancun this time and, build the resort and do what we do. So I told Diana, I said, what do you think? And it just so happened that one of our friends in Cancun was the acupuncturist for one of the IVF doctors who had an extremely high success rate of helping women get pregnant. So Diana said, listen, if we go to Mexico, I'm going to try IVF again. I said, hey, that's on you. I support you. Let's try it. And it was a little bit of a different experience in the States. We had our doctor's cell phone number. It was more of a humanistic approach than so scientific. And he was very concerned with her the whole time because of her age and because of what happened the first time. So he was monitoring her very closely. And about halfway through, her blood pressure started rising and not coming down. And then it was about 25 weeks where her blood pressure shot through the roof. And the doctor said, okay, go to the hospital. I'll meet you there. And we were right in the late 25 weeks, so like 25 weeks plus 3 days or something. And he said, listen, we're going to have to deliver the baby to save Diana's life, because she had developed severe preeclampsia. And that night she was admitted. She hung out for the next 4 days to administer these shots to help the baby's lungs grow. And then right at 26 weeks on the dot, she had a C-section, and they took Grayson. He was 1.5 pounds, 12 inches long, and he immediately went into the NICU. And from there, let me tell you, it was a whirlwind of uncertainty and craziness, and not speaking the language, because we knew enough Spanish to, be dangerous, but medical Spanish is a whole nother level. We had translators come in and they're like, look, I don't know these words in English. I don't know how to translate these medical terms. I just don't even know what to say. So we were in the dark the whole time. We had a phenomenal doctor, but it was charades, to see. It was like thumbs up or thumbs down. How's Grayson doing?
Wow.
Yeah. So there we were in Mexico in the NICU. Diana's body, we were just trying to do everything to get her stabilized. I won't give away everything because, it's in the book that I wrote, Breathe, Eat, Poop, and Grow. But it was, I'll never forget the first day that I actually got to see Grayson. It was several hours after he was born, and it was the most awkward feeling. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to act. I almost didn't even want to see him, which sounds so weird. But I went into that NICU. I had to wear the smock or whatever you call it, the medical smock. I had to wear a mask. This is before COVID, so I wasn't a mask expert, so my glasses were fogging up. And here's this little guy. I mean, it's hard to put into words how small this baby was, and people see pictures of him and go, oh, he's not that small. But you cannot put into words or take a picture of the size of Grayson.
Brian, so Brian, like if I look at my hand, for example, with somebody listening, can you give us a context? If we were listening to this right now and we're looking at our hand in front of us, like how big would Grayson be on your average size hand?
Well, how about this for context? I use this often. It seems to work. If you imagine Subway 12-inch sub.
Okay.
That's exactly how long his body was, 12 inches. And he weighed, less than 2 pounds, which is like 4 bananas.
Okay. So that just gives us some context. Wow. Okay. Yeah.
So, I'll just remember, I'll never forget, I walked into the NICU and the buzzers were buzzing and, uncertainty is everywhere. Nobody speaks English. I felt like they were looking at me, and talking about me, how that paranoia sets in. And here I see a little Grayson, this like bubble dome cocoon thing with wires coming out of these domes, and his coo, like he made this cooing sound, like just a fight for life. And it just rocked me to my core. And as we went through, I let certain people know what was going on. Obviously, my parents, her parents first off, and both moms, her mom and my mom, came like the next day. But we'd let just immediate family know, but that started spreading like crazy. So we could not field all of the responses coming in because people just wanted to know. They wanted to help us or pray for us or just know what was going on. And it finally got to a point where we went live on Facebook just to kind of update everybody at once. And what an amazing experience, because from that live, we had pictures, we had everything. Everyone started watching kind of our story. I always related to like the Truman Show. They go to work, people will come in later and tune in to see what was going on with the Heiligs. And it was something that when we posted the pictures, we had NICU nurses from all over the world reaching out to us and saying, hey, listen, he's not necessarily in the right or best position. And then it was my cousin, who was a NICU nurse for, at that time, 17 years. She's like, listen, you might want to think about moving him to the States for better care. And it just, our minds were blown, because how do you move a 1.5 pound baby? Mm-hmm. And it was, terrifying. We knew we were in a great hospital. We knew we had a phenomenal doctor, but what we didn't realize is that the NICU equipment in Cancun was like 30 years behind. He was in a bed with saran wrap and a heat lamp. They didn't have incubators, and we didn't know the difference, because who the heck plans to have a premature baby, and even know what an isolate looks like. And so we talk about uncertainty and doubt put into our minds. because just the thought of moving this baby. And we had a phenomenal community of people around us that did a lot of the late work and investigating. And we talked to our doctor, and then we found a hospital in Miami, and those two doctors spoke to each other. And finally, it was the best thing for Grayson was to move him and transport him to the States. One of those lives that we did, our friend actually said, "Hey, you should write a book because this is like the most incredible story I've ever heard in my life. I can't even believe it's real, and that much less that I know you guys, you should write a book." And it was kind of just like, haha, yeah, you should write a book. That's the last thing on my mind in this moment. It was all about trying to have our baby survive. But it stuck with me, and Diana as well. And several years after Grayson was born, we kind of circled back to that notion and that concept of, every single person I would tell our story to, they were like, "Man, it sounds like a movie. You should write a book." And so it was 3 years after he was born, and we were in church. The pastor said, "Hey, have you ever asked what God wants you to do with your life?" And I thought, well, no, actually, I always just went with what I wanted, and he said, "Let's try it. Close your eyes and just see what happens, ask." And it was almost immediate, Dave. It was like, write the book, speak about it, and transform lives. And so I went to work on it the next day. I mean, I wrote the first word,
Wow.
And that turned into the first sentence, the first paragraph, first, chapter, and so forth. And here we are now, 3 years after I started the first word. It took me 26 months to write the book, 10 months of editing and book design, formatting, and so forth. And now the book has been out for 3 weeks, just over 3 weeks. So wild.
So Brian, in that moment on the Facebook Live and stuff and sharing with your community, having that feedback come from the NICU nurses who are giving you feedback and giving you suggestions, and they're experts. You're not, right? In that moment, you're like, I'm hungry for information. I'm hungry to learn as a young dad and trying to figure this all out. How does it feel now to be on the other side of this, where people are coming to your book now? You're the expert in the fact that you walk this path, and now you're able to help people just like people helped you in the moment. You're now able to help others through the book by being faithful and following through to do this book.
Yeah.
What does that feel like to you to be on the other side of this now, being able to help people?
It is the feeling is good, but it's almost a feeling of obligation, but in the best way possible. I don't know if that, might not be the right word, but I feel like there's so much uncertainty around having a preemie, much less a micro-preemie. The uncertainty and just the questions that parents have. We recently had Grayson's actually the owners of his school that he goes to. They just had their baby girl not too long ago, and she was born premature, put in the NICU, and to be able to, we're like one of the first people they reached out to, to be able to be that resource for them was incredibly gratifying. And it's so much easier to look back and say it's gonna be okay, especially understanding at what number of weeks they were born, the baby was born, and the care that is here, the equipment that is here in the States versus what we had to deal with. So I don't ever want to feel or say be aloof about it, but it's this knowing that the baby is more than likely going to be okay. Now let's focus on how we can get you, parents, through this next however long it is. We were ultimately in the NICU for 105 days in 2 different countries. So it's we have a little experience. And so, it's extremely gratifying, but it's almost, it's like the calling that I told you about. It's like, I have to do this. As much support as we got, which was one of the most incredible experiences of our lives in that how a community of people from all over the world came together. That is extremely gratifying, humbling. The It's emotional. It makes you want to be a better human being, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So,
So you mentioned that when it was brought up to you that you should write a book about your story, how you kind of just a little in that moment kind of dismissed it as like, yeah, right, okay, I have other things to focus on right now. There's
yeah.
people that are listening to our conversation, Brian, and they have a story, maybe similar to yours or in a totally different way, but there's something special that's happened in their life. And whenever somebody brings it up to them that they should write a story, they're like, no, 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 no. I'm not an author. That's not me.
Yep.
Can you talk to them right now? Because they're hearing you go, well, I heard Brian just say what I say every time someone tells me to write a book. I
Yeah.
tell them that it's not what I do or who I am. You've done it. So you're at a
Yes.
different place than they are. Can you speak to them just around the idea of writing your story and why that's important?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that if you look at if you feel that this is something that you want to do in any capacity, I would say to well, let me go backwards. If anything's happening major in your life, I would highly recommend just taking notes, taking pictures, getting your emotions in the moment out. We had a NICU family who their baby was born at 26 weeks, just like ours. And through a friend, we got connected very early on in their delivery. And they were dealing with so many of the same things that we were. And I said, listen, do me a favor, whether you do anything with it or not, take copious notes and videos and audio and pictures for your own just sanity of where you have been and now where you're at after it's all over. You'll be able to look back and just go, wow, if I got through that, I can pretty much get through anything, right? But so that would be number one. I would tell people just whatever it is, if you're going to do nothing with it, just for your own self to have these notes and pictures and videos. But then if this is a notion that you're toying with in any capacity, I didn't put any expectations at all on this book. I just wrote it to write it, and what it became for me, and this is what I would urge someone who's even contemplating it, is it became very therapeutic. It was devastating to live through it again so vividly and to be able to put your thoughts onto paper. But at the end of it, after about 25 boxes of Kleenex, it was therapeutic. I could actually speak about it without completely going hysterical. I could be there and be a better friend or person for other people that might be going through something similar. And then it took on a life of its own where I would then tell people, look, I'm doing this. And they said, oh my gosh, bravo. I can't wait to tell someone. I have another friend. And then pretty soon I had friends and family reaching out to me with the people in their life that were going through something like this. And I became, this vessel for other people. So if you're going to do nothing with it, but have it written down, maybe it's for the person that you went through it with. My wife, Diana, she did not read the book at all until it was the very, very end. And I said, babe, it's the last edit before we go to publish. It's you. Do you want to do this? Because she would start to read it and just lose it. So she finally mustered through it, and it brought her some kind of peace as well. And she had no idea some of the things that I had gone through because she was either in the ICU or just it wasn't from her perspective. So she didn't really understand all the things that I was doing behind the scenes, if you will. So if it's your calling in any capacity or just for your own therapeutic, ways to just get it down, get it out of you and put it onto paper and then see what happens. No expectations.
Good. I like that because, again, people are struggling with this. They're like, who would ever want to read my book? Who would ever want to hear my story? And the fact that you did this is great. Talk more about the book. Let's talk about who this book would be for, who you kind of have a vision in your mind as a reader. I love the idea, Brian, that we walk through a bookstore and there's just a sea of books. Just there are books everywhere. And you're like, I don't even know where to start. So the idea of this show is I want to connect a reader to you so that when they see your book on a shelf or on a website, they already know, they've heard your voice. They know a little bit about your story. they'll get more out of the book and the reading experience, hearing you talk about your book.
Yeah.
So to that reader who's going to buy your book and open it for the first time, what's your love letter to the reader? Tell us about who this book is for, and again, why this book is out there.
So I would say that in the beginning, I had a thought of who this book was for, and that changed after it came out based on who was reading it and the feedback. And so I'll explain what I mean. In the beginning, I wrote it for NICU parents. It's just to support NICU parents who, the NICU parents at 2 a.m. who have no clue what's happening in their life, that are sitting in the hospital with all the bells and whistles going off, not understanding what a Brady is, not understanding why the nurses and doctors aren't frantic when the bells go off. And to that person, I wanted to just say, hey, you're not alone. There's other people that have been, because that's what you feel like. You feel alone, like you're the only person that this is happening to. And so that was kind of how it started. Then it morphed into this. Well, I have this strong feeling that I need to give back to my community. And when I say my community, I mean my personal friends and family, but we had strangers from all over the world as well. So to be able to give back, and what that looks like is, Breathe, Eat, Poop, and Grow, the book, all the net proceeds are going to go toward putting proper incubators into Mexican hospitals. So it became something more of a bigger mission, just to raise awareness that the equipment isn't right there. And so they need help. They just need help. And so then as people read it, I didn't realize this, but Amazon has now this AI tool that summarizes all of the reviews that people give and then kind of come up with their own synopsis of what this book is all about. And it's interesting because I've heard other people say exactly this, that I mean, we've had people read the book that aren't even parents, that don't have any experience in the NICU or don't know anybody that was in the NICU. And what they said is that a lot of people are, saying, look, my faith in humanity is restored. I thought that I couldn't go through what I was going through until I read this book, and it gave me the strength and power to continue on. I've got away from God, and now I feel that this is an that I'm back. We've had people get baptized, because of like what we experienced. So that's what I mean when don't have any expectations about writing the book. Just get it out there and let the people tell you what it's all about for them. And so that I don't know if I'm answering your question directly, but it has morphed into this. They always say, later I found out about all these book techniques and styles. I didn't know anything. They're like, oh, you have to have an exact focus of what you want this to be and start backwards and all these things, and who's your target reader. And so I've never written a book before. I had no clue. I became inundated with all the should do's and this, that, and and I just didn't do it. I just wrote it, and that's kind of how it morphed.
Yeah. So I'm going to put you, Brian, in a situation. You're in a hospital waiting room. You look over, a dad walks into the room, sits down, pulls out a copy of your book, not realizing who you are in the room. And they're starting to read the book. And you're sitting there looking at this dad. And you're like, oh, I want to go over and sit beside him and tell him you're going to be okay. You're going to have good support here in the hospital. But this book, I want you to get this out of this book, to that dad in the hospital waiting room. Doesn't realize you're the author of that book they're reading. You go sit beside him for a moment. What's your message to that dad right there in that moment?
The message to the dad is, and my book is written from a dad's perspective, which is very rare in this world, as far as the NICU book world goes. You're getting me here. Emotional. I mean, I would say to ask for and accept help.
Mm.
You feel like you have to do everything on your own and be the provider and, be the support for everybody. But if you don't take care of you, then you can't be that for your family. So what does that look like? Through the uncertainty, don't forget to sleep. I think I was up for something like 70 some hours. That doesn't help anybody. Ask for help, reach out. Don't be the one that has to always try to fix everything, because in this moment, there is nothing you can do. You have to have faith in the fact that there are people that have been through this before, and doctors and nurses, that this is what they do. There's nurses, and then there's NICU nurses, and there's doctors, and there's NICU doctors, and then there's premature NICU nurses, and then there's micro-preemie NICU nurses. Mm-hmm. And everybody has their expertise and their passion, and they do know what they're doing. But in the same breath, I would say to dad, you are and must be the advocate for your baby. So talk to your wife or the baby's mom and trust yourselves and trust your gut and go with your instincts. No matter what the experts say, they're also not your child's parent. And so you just know, and trust that you do. There was many times where we battled back and forth, and we quote one, and it ended up being the right thing to do. So definitely advocate, never stop advocating. Also stay on the roller coaster. Don't give up, don't quit, there's times where you're going to want to walk away from it all. You can't do that either. Mm-hmm. So it's a fine line, it's a fine balance between taking care of yourself, getting help, staying there, and then advocating for your child.
For those that are listening to us, Brian, they're not seeing you in the moment. You have your Superman shirt on, which I would, as a fellow dad, I would say you've more than earned the shirt, just so you know. But this whole story has left a mark on you, literally. On your arm, you have Super Grayson on your arm right there. So, and that's on the back of the book as well, right? The tattoo?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So, very early on, we, coined Grayson as Super G.
Super G. So, I love it.
Super G. And so we, that ultimately just became the thing. And I found an actual exact Superman logo, like the traditional logo, but with a G instead of the S. And, so people were putting that on their profile picture, and that just became kind of the thing. And, to honor him after, I was able to get a Superman Super G tattoo. And then it's just always a constant reminder that what he went through, Grayson went through and survived. Yep. There's not many things that are that big a deal in life. We can get through this.
So one of the things I like to do, Brian, for my authors, especially a great connection, like, having you on the show, is I live near Niagara Falls, and that is the set for one of the early Superman movies, right? Yes. Filmed right here, right? Way back in the day. So yep. I take books from my authors and I go to that spot and take pictures of your book at the falls and give it back to you as a guest and say, thank you for being part of the show. It gives me an opportunity to talk to a lot of tourists who are like, why is this guy taking pictures of books at Niagara Falls? But I can take pictures of your book at the site where the movie was filmed and send that back to you, right? Just to say thanks for being here and part of the show. But
it sounds incredible.
Yeah. So that's what I'm going to do for you, is send you some photos for you to have.
Appreciate it.
But for those people that are listening again, that are listening to this, I had one author on my podcast just recently. She was a preemie, was in NICU when she was born, grew up to become a nurse in the exact same NICU
Wow.
serving with the team that was there when she was born, working with the doctor that delivered her.
Oh my
Like,
goodness.
what a moment, right? To then be
Ah,
back in the same space, working with the same team that was there when she was born. So
incredible.
there's an amazing path for Grayson in this world. I don't know what that is, and you probably don't know yet. It's early, right? But
Right.
there's a reason why this life is here.
Yes.
There's got to be a reason for this, right?
Agreed.
The fact that he's beat so many odds to be where he is today, there's something special about this kid, right?
Yeah.
So,
Without question.
or okay, now one more time, I'm going to pull a little bit on the heartstring here for you,
Here we
Brian.
go.
Okay, take a big breath. All right,
Okay.
Grayson's going to listen to this podcast in the future.
Oh boy.
Okay,
Yep.
Grayson's going to press play on his good old dad going on a podcast to talk about becoming an author and talking about this book. Grayson's going to hear these words, right? These are good. This podcast is going to live into the future.
You're
You
killing
must
me.
take a breath. All right. We can take this out if you're like, I can't do this. But I just think
Okay.
I just think it'd be great if Grayson could hear the voice of his dad. My dad's long gone. I don't get the opportunity to hear my dad talk like this. Okay, so now it's my turn to get a little weird. Um, but I would love for him to hear the voice of his dad,
Ah,
right?
wow.
And
Yep.
just your message to him in the future. He's going to press play. What do you want him to hear in this moment from his dad?
Okay, buddy. Listen, you absolutely transformed our lives. You restored our faith in God and humanity. You've lived more life than most people have, and you survived. And so you may not remember those things. I would have you really look at the hero that you are and know that anything is possible if you look at where you've come and whatever you want to do and be and have in the future, just go for it. Forget what anybody says, including me and mom. Do what you want to do and do it for all the right reasons because you are absolutely here for a reason. And know your greatness and your bigness and make things happen for what you want and for the world. Killing me.
Great. Grayson, when you listen to this, your dad's super proud of you. And the fact that this book is out in the world to help others, that's your story carries on way, way long into the future. So, yeah. And I like it how you said, even though he might not realize what he had lived through,
Yep.
there's a reason why he's here. So, the other thing I love about what you're doing, Brian, is that we kind of went right past it there a little bit when you were talking about the book,
Yep.
is how you're redirecting the funds raised through the book and through sharing the story. You're not here to build a big fancy house and buy a boat, right?
Right.
You're here. There's a reason why you're doing this.
Yep.
And I want more people to understand the rationale behind the book and what you're
Okay.
doing with the funds from this book. Can we go a little deeper on that too, please?
Without question. There was a woman, and you'll read about it in the book, that her name's Allison, and she created it was called Plum Fund. It's kind of like what is it? GoFundMe, but it's called Plum Fund during the time when we were in Mexico. So this is a stranger who worked with my mom. That's it. That's the only connection that we had. And she's living in Mexico, and she started this fund and did all that there was to do to put it together. And it went live, and we would talk about it again. That's my message to parents is if people are willing to help you in whatever capacity that looks like, take it because you never know when and if you're going to need it. And more than likely, you're going to need it. But she started this Plum Fund, and the way in which the world, again, it's friends, family, and strangers, came together and contributed not only prayers and good thoughts and well wishes and stories of preemies and micro-preemies that they've had in their lives, but their money. I mean, lots of money, tens of thousands of dollars. And there's, there's no way we could have moved him to the States and did what we did and survived our first year without those contributions. And so the thought of when I was writing the book, remember it was church and I was basically told to write the book, speak about it and transform lives. The other part of me that I could not let get out of my head was, this is bigger than me. I'm just a conduit, and I could never take the money, any kind of profit from this project. It all has to go back to putting proper incubators into Mexican hospitals, because when you read Breathe, Eat, Poop, and Grow, I'm not going to give it away, but there's a statistic in there it'll blow your mind based on the survival rate of kids that are born at this gestation in Mexico versus the States. And so when the doctor Campos in Mexico saw the mobile equipment that the mobile team had, he was blown away. He'd never seen anything like it. And so just to understand that they're 30 years behind in technology, even though they have phenomenal skills as doctors and nurses, they're limited on what they can do to help other babies live and survive. So I just thought there's no way that we can take a dime from this. It's got to go back. And look, I'm not as super naive to really understand that we're probably not going to make millions of dollars, but I think it's bigger than that. In other words, being here with you, Dave, and speaking about it, that's step 2, right? Write the book was the first thing. And that's kind of giving me the, quote, authority, if you will, to speak about our experience, but also to raise the awareness that the fact that, and I mean, we're talking a major Mexican state and city, Cancun. And it's, it's a big, big place with lots of people. And you would think very Americanized. Most of the people in the IVF doctor in the clinic were from the US, going there to do their IVF because it's 1/7 of the cost. But then the problem is, oh my gosh, if you're born premature and you happen to be in Mexico, it's not good for the babies. So I envision having, seeing the day when we can bring a proper incubator into that hospital where Grayson was born, and we want to call it the G unit, and be able to have a proper isolate to give kids a fighting chance and help save babies' lives, because the statistics are mind-blowing. So to answer your question directly, I just couldn't do it. I felt that the people that contributed to our lives, we have to continue that good faith and help for other people.
So normally this is where I ask about your website and how we connect with you and all that stuff. But I also want to put this out too, Brian, that there's people who are obviously going to go buy the book. I was just hearing that alone makes me want to buy the book just for that reason.
Right.
But what if there's someone listening who just wants to donate? We have a very generous audience that listens to the show. We have people who listen to the show that could write a check today that could really help in the process of doing this, over and above the purchase of the books. And they would just like to reach out to you, maybe anonymously, just donate to this and make this just happen. And they can do that. They can do that with no problem at all. And they're listening to this going, this is exactly where I want to put my money to help. And they just want to reach out to you personally and have that conversation. So for those who want to buy the book, obviously we want to buy the book. We're going to leave a great review, like you mentioned, about the whole Amazon AI thing. That's awesome.
Yep.
We're going to leave great reviews. We're going to buy books for other people. We're going to do all that. But again, there's that person that's like, Brian, I just want to write a check. So where do we go? How do we do that?
And so, and I really appreciate that. I've actually had people say that same thing. And what I did before I published is I created an LLC. It's Breathe, Eat, Poop, Grow, but it's BEPG. I'm a LLC. And that all the Amazon and the Apple and all the different outlets where books are sold, all the money funnels into that account. So I don't I don't know. I guess writing a check to the company and then mailing it to me would be a
Yeah.
route to go. I haven't really thought that far ahead as far as, you know, sending money to Mexico is not the smartest thing to do, knowing, I've lived there and knowing how everything works there. We need to actually deliver a physical unit, a G
Yeah.
unit there.
Yeah.
And so, that would be, people are like, start a 503 or whatever that's called, charity here, but I don't think that translates too well to Mexico for what have you. So right now, just all the money is funneling into that business account. And so I don't have anything linked up as far as GoFundMe or anything like that at this moment. So I guess just reaching out to me specifically and we can make that work, I would really, really greatly appreciate it.
Okay.
And I wish I had more specific to tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm just anticipating there's going to be someone listening to this a year from now, 5 years from now, and they're like, I want to donate. So this is like ongoing donations. This is not like in the next 6 months. It could be anytime, right? So
well, I think also if you just reach out to me, so the website is easy. It's my name. So brianheilig.com. It's BrianHeilig.com. I mean, in all my social media, it's just put in Brian Heilig, Google my name, and I think you should be able to come up with it. We've just been so public over the past 7 years,
Yeah. We'll definitely put links for everything in the show notes so people can connect with you, buy the book as well. So Brian, as we wrap up this, I know we're going to get together and record for Dad Space as well, but to our Living the Next Chapter audience that are listening to us today, your closing thoughts as we wrap up on, again, let's share our story and why this is so important. Yeah. Just wrap us up here.
So I would say if you have any inkling whatsoever of writing a book, even if it's not published, just for yourself, I got caught up in the how do I start, where do I start, researching how to start. And then that became 1 year, became 2 years, became 3 years. And I bought all the tools and the Scrivener and all these different things. And then that started going, well, I don't know how to use that. And it was all these excuses that came up for me. I would say to someone who's even contemplating writing in any capacity, just put the first word on paper. Just go for it. I needed to do a math equation because I'm kind of analytical. So I said, I Googled the memoir and how many words would a memoir be, or should it be? What's the average? And then I found that it was about 80,000 words. And I thought, well, how long does it take to type 80,000 words? So I Googled how long it takes to type per minute, and then I want to do this in a year time. So I did 80,000 divided by 365. And then I multiplied how long it takes to, words per minute. And it came to 7 minutes a day to finish the book in a year. And so I didn't account for all the emotion that I had to deal with and the research and so forth, but it got me going and it got me to write that first word. And, the first 7 minutes, I would sometimes just write for 15 minutes, but I knew I was 2 days ahead, and there would be other days where I just look at the screen and just go, I got nothing, so it all kind of made up for it. But more than anything, I just type, and you can clean it up and edit it later, but just get it out there and get it onto paper.
Awesome. Brian, thank you so much for being on Living the Next Chapter. I love listening to new authors as they share the passion behind what they do. And again, thank you for showing up in this world. And to Grayson, you're in a good family. You're in a good spot, Grayson. So you'll do well. Thank you, Brian, for being on the show.
Thank you, Dave, for having me. Appreciate it.
Hey, well, thank you for listening. It's a new year, and we're excited to be releasing even more great episodes of Living the Next Chapter, and we want you to come along for the journey. Thank you for being here. If you know of an author that you would love to have featured on the podcast, an author that you enjoy, an author that brings you that excitement, that you would just love to hear them interviewed on this podcast, I would love to hear your suggestion for a future guest and what would be a question or two that you would want us to ask them on your behalf. go to livingthenextchapter.com. There's a little speak pipe icon there. You can leave me a voice message. Tell me who should be on the show and give me some question ideas. And I'll use your request and reach out to that author and invite them on and give you full credit for the idea. livingthenextchapter.com. Would love to hear your suggestion, and thank you for listening. Catch you on the next episode.